to the Building Your Brand podcast. And this episode is inspired by a post that I did on Instagram that actually did really well. And it was titled 6 Things I Don't Do in My Business That the Internet Tells Me That I Should. Now, the inspiration behind this post was my interview with Sophie Cliff, which honestly I reference all of the time. Anytime anyone asks me about a standout moment from the podcast for me, this is the first one that comes to mind, because she said to me, it was the first time I interviewed her, and she said that should is the killer of joy, the word should. And honestly, I think about that all the time. And I've actually really intentionally started to try using the word could instead of should whenever I'm talking to my friends, because while it sort of challenged me on how I kind of receive shoulds from other people, it also really challenged me on me actually giving out shoulds. So I would be chatting to friends and I'd be like, oh, you should do this. And I was like, no, I am sucking the joy out of this. Let me say you could do this. So this is just one option. And I think just thinking about how you can change your language is actually really powerful, and just that one small shift really changes how I feel about the word. But it inspired me to do this post about 6 things that I'm not doing in my business that the internet tells me that I should, because I think so often we hear all of this noise and all of this advice online, and it has definitely sent me off in some different directions, down some paths that weren't right for me, and then I have to sort of check in on myself and realize that I need to be confident in my choices and my decisions and what I feel like I should do in my business. Now, hilariously, when I went back to check the post, I was going through all of the shoulds that I did, and while I titled the post 6 shoulds, there was actually only 5. So it turns out that I can't count properly. I've actually put together 7 for this episode because loads of people commented and shared what their shoulds were, and it reminded me of a whole bunch of others that I hadn't even remembered to include. Well, I say a whole bunch of others, 2 others. So I'm going to include them in this episode. So let's go through them. So number 1 is I don't present one branding design concept to my clients. And this one was actually a source of shame for me for a while, because I would chat to so many different designers who would talk about how they moved to the one concept method and it's changed their lives and they love it. And I was always like, oh, this is what I should be doing. And I felt really anxious about it and really stressed about it. And I was a bit of a failure because I wasn't doing it. But then I thought about my process, and I actually really enjoy my process. My clients seem to enjoy it. It's working really well for me. And I was like, oh, why am I so stressed about this? And the reason I love the 3 concept method, well, I mean, it could be any number, it just happens to be 3 for me. But the reason that I love it is that I find it creates a much more collaborative experience between me and the client. So I present the 3 concepts to them, they pick out what they love the most. And, you'll hear different designers talk about, oh, they always pick the one that you like the least. I have learned ways of presenting that means that doesn't happen, but I also make sure that I love all of the concepts so that it doesn't really feel like there's one that I love the least. That has definitely helped with any sort of sense of disappointment. I also design them in a way that say they love a colour from one concept, but they love the logo from the other concept. Because all 3 of them answer the brief, there are elements that I can take from each one. And what tends to happen is that they will pick the concept that they love, and then usually there's a bit of back and forth and a bit of tweaking to get it exactly right, and then they come away with something that they feel really, really passionate about, they really love. And I think it really helps that they are part of the process, especially because they need to feel confident using the brand going forward. So that is why I'm sticking with my 3 concept method. I'm not saying I won't ever try the 1 concept method, but I've got over this feeling of shame and guilt about not doing it, and I'm embracing my process, which I love. Okay, so number 2, only talk about one topic on social media. There's actually another one that's quite similar to this, but yeah, only talk about one topic on social media. For years, probably even 10 years ago, I had a lot of friends who really niched down their Instagram content. And this was back near the start of Instagram days. And, they would just get so many followers, and, their accounts would kind of I don't even think we called it viral back then, but their accounts would go viral, they'd grow really fast, but they had to keep sharing the same type of content. And basically, I could never bring myself to niche down to one type of content because I knew I would get bored. And I am the sort of creative that likes to try lots of different things, that likes to explore different things, likes to talk about different things. And so I just decided for my own personal enjoyment, I wouldn't limit myself to what I talked about. And maybe this has harmed my brand. Maybe I would have more clients if I just talked about one thing. I personally feel like it hasn't massively harmed my brand, and it has meant that it's much easier for me to show up and be consistent on social media because I actually find it like a really interesting creative outlet because I can talk about all sorts of different things. I obviously do limit myself and I don't just talk about everything on social media. Like I do curate it, but there are quite a lot of different topics that I talk about, and then even more in stories, like I'll share like more about my life and stuff. So that is number 2. Number 3 is post on TikTok. Now, if you have listened to this podcast for a while, you will know that back in, I don't know when it was, maybe like 2023, 2022, 2023. I think it was like my second ever video on TikTok went viral. It had 2.4 million views. It did not benefit me in any way, shape, or form. It was like interesting and it was fascinating. And then I felt this pressure to create all of this content for TikTok. I basically went from 50 followers on TikTok to 7,000 followers. It kind of like in a 2-week period. And I did make more content, but none of it was landing as well as that viral video. And I just never really got TikTok. And while I did for a while consume content there, I feel like it was never the platform that I loved and enjoyed the most. And so then I just stopped consuming content there, and I would like check it maybe like once a month, which is terrible. That's when I realized like it probably wasn't the platform for me. And so I just stopped creating content there. And for the longest time, I would give myself a hard time about it. And I would be like, oh, right, this is the year or this is the month that I'm going to start creating content consistently on TikTok. And there was just other things that were interesting me more. So I just never did it. And like, there's lots of people giving great advice about how to go viral and how to sell your services and your products on TikTok. And I just decided that since I'm like a small business owner and I don't have the capacity to market myself everywhere, I'm just not going to worry about TikTok. Again, maybe I will down the line change my mind and give it a try, but for now, it's not for me. Okay, number 4, say yes to every opportunity. Now, this was like a really interesting one for me at the start of the rejection challenge because when I was like so actively pursuing rejections and pursuing opportunities, I kind of felt like I had to say yes to any opportunity that was coming my way. Like it was like a really intense year. Like there was momentum building and I was getting loads of opportunities and I was kind of saying yes to everything. And by the end of the year, I felt exhausted and I did feel overwhelmed. And I think maybe there are seasons and times when it's good to sort of say yes to everything that comes your way, but I'm definitely in a season now where I'm like, no, I need to be saying no to a lot more that comes into my inbox. And I've got a bit better at kind of narrowing down, like what the opportunities are that I really enjoy, I want to invest my time in, what I'm happy to sort of leave to someone else maybe. So yeah, I am definitely not saying yes to every opportunity at this point in my career. And obviously not everyone on the internet is telling you to say yes to every opportunity, but I think that is the advice that some people give. And like I said, maybe there's times where that is a good philosophy. I don't think you can sort of sustain it for that long. But it definitely feels good to be in a season where I'm being way more selective and I guess way more strategic about what I say yes to. Like, is this going to help me achieve my goals? Does this align with what I'm trying to do with my business? Those sort of questions help me decide which opportunities are valuable and which aren't. Okay, next one is, and this is number 5, share hot takes about other designers' branding. Now, this is something that I see so many designers do, and I find it a bit depressing, mainly because I think I would be quite gutted if I found designers like absolutely trashing my work online. Like it doesn't feel like the sort of community and industry that I want to be part of when that is happening. And obviously it's great for engagement. It's very clickbaity. I came across a whole YouTube channel that was like two designers in America who every video would basically roast other designers. And I was just like, that this is not the design industry that I want to be part of. Yes, you might get loads of views on YouTube. Yes, you might get monetized on YouTube. Yes, you might get opportunities out of it, but that is just not how I want to build my brand. I think the other issue with it is that you don't know what went on behind closed doors with any branding project. You don't know what they were briefed. You don't know how sort of difficult the client was or how much they pushed back or like what the limitations they were given, like you must use this color, you must do this, you must do that. Like you don't know what parameters the designers were working with. And ultimately, with branding, the goal is to answer the brief the client has given you and create branding or a design that is going to help the client achieve their goals. And if you don't know the brief, then you can't tell whether something has been successful or not because you can't measure it based on what the brief was. So, yeah, roasting other people's design work. I basically made a commitment a long time ago that I wouldn't publicly critique anybody else's design work online. And I feel good about this decision. And again, maybe I would get more engagement and maybe my YouTube would grow faster if I was doing that, but it just does not feel aligned to me and it's not the sort of design industry that I want to be part of. So again, I feel confident and comfortable with my decision. Okay, number 6 is I am not going to niche down by industry. Now, loads of people advise in all different industries, not just for designers, to niche down the clients that you work with. So like I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing it. I think it works really, really well for some people. So I've seen designers who will niche down, say, and only work with beverage companies or will niche down and only work with wellness, like health companies. I personally love working with companies from all different industries. So a few months ago, I did some branding for a machine knitting community. I've also done branding for a personal trainer, like at the same time, so I really enjoy learning about all these different industries, getting into the sort of like details of the brief, learning about, like the different communities, like the different audiences that they're talking to. Like that makes my job really interesting and exciting. I guess I have niched down by sort of size of company. Like I tend to work with much smaller businesses. Usually there's just one person, maybe a very small team. So I've niched a bit by size, but not by industry. And I don't ever plan to niche by industry. I can't imagine ever sort of finding an industry where I'm like, yes, I only want to design branding for this niche forever. So yeah, I'm not going to do it. Okay, my final one, number 7, and this was one I added inspired by some of the comments under the post, is I am not going to grow a team. And often the advice online will be, especially for designers actually, to grow a team, to grow an agency, you get more clients in and maybe you're struggling to fulfill all the clients that you're getting in. So you hire someone, and then that sort of keeps progressing until you have like a big agency, a big team. And I've worked in an agency, I've worked in-house in like a team, and I honestly am very happy with how things are at the moment. Like I don't have any goals or aspiration to grow my business in that way. I do outsource some things. So I work with my friend Lois and she helped me with a bunch of like all sorts of different tasks in my business actually. And I also outsource some of the podcast editing to Lucy, who you will have heard me talk about. So I guess in some senses I have a team, like I have 2 people that support me in my business, but on a sort of freelance basis. They're not employees of mine. And to be honest, I just don't want to have to deal with the stress of having employees, needed to bring in enough work to pay them. Like I know other people love that and it works really well for them. I actually did an interview on the podcast with Christy from the Pink Pony Club. Is it club? Oh my goodness, Pink, I'll put it in the show notes. But anyway, she has grown an agency, and in that interview, she was like really honest about like what some of the struggles were, you know, how it's gone. I think the agency grew really, really quickly, and I actually really appreciated her insight. And for her, it was a total goal and a dream, and it's amazing to get to watch her fulfill that. And it just made me realize again that that isn't a goal or aspiration of mine. So anyway, I hope hearing these things that I'm not doing in my business inspires you and encourages you to have the confidence to not always follow the advice that you see online. You get to build a business that you love and feels good for you, and that is going to look different from other people. And while, yes, the advice might be sound, it just might not be the right advice for you, and it might be just not what you want to do, and that's okay. So feel free to go out and work out what your goals are and what you enjoy and what you want to do, and pick and choose which advice you want to listen to on the internet. I would love to hear the things that you have decided not to do. So come let me know. I'm at Liz M. Mosley or at Building Your Brand podcast on Instagram. And I always love hearing your feedback on these episodes. So yeah, I actually loved reading what other people have decided they're not going to do. That is often common advice. So I would love to hear yours too.